what we're talking about today was individual mind-generated reality, that each of us lives in our own reality, and we have our own versions, and we are confused about what's real, and that's what our whole thesis of why the entire human race is insane, is because we're saying that each one of us lives in our own individual virtual reality, and each one of us confuses that virtual reality with actual reality.
To wit, we think that virtual reality is true.
That's right.
Is in fact, the actual truth.
Right.
Which it isn't.
And so Arthur's idea about the holiday season is an example of that. There was Arthur's mind-generated reality, that this is actually a time of year for him to become kind of angry and bitter and just intolerant
or more angry, more bitter, and more intolerant than usual.
That's right. Okay, and reason to just dive deep underground and hide, because he finds the way most people act offensive, and you pluck anybody off the street, and their description of the holidays, I'm sure, would be somewhat different than that. So, and we haven't. The show that's on this week is the show where Arthur and I had a disagreement on the air, and that provoked some
disagreement. Kids, that's what your parents say when they have a fight.
And that provoked one of our viewers to say that maybe it would be interesting to see us really dissect that, and we think we did that some on the show that's coming up. But so what we thought would be more interesting is if we just talked about realities, because that's really where the
conflicting realities,
where the source of conflict comes from, is because our realities don't match up. And it's funny, what I noticed when I watched that back was that I could see my reality shifting. And that's one of the interesting things about filming yourself, is that and particularly in something like that, a non-scripted real situation, was my story changed as I could see what worked and what didn't work in the conversation with Arthur. I shifted how I told the story of what had happened. So, it's like, not only do I have a mind-generated reality, my reality is malleable depending on circumstances. And there's one main goal of my mind-generated reality. And can you guess what that is?
Mm-hmm. To be right.
That's
to
right.
Not be wrong, put it another way.
You're right, Arthur.
I relate to that. The reason I'm ready with my answer is because it's absolutely true for me. Right.
And that's what I could see, where the subtle shifts in my story about what had happened when I'd gotten up was that I was telling away, here's how I was right in that circumstance, and Arthur was shooting that excuse down. So I had to pull out another way for me to be right, and run that up the flagpole and see if that would work, see if that would fly. And maybe that was, if you wanted to get down to the root of where the conflict was between us, was each of us competing to be right in this situation, each of us competing for our virtual reality to be the truth.
In our book, we say anger is always a symptom of insanity. Anytime you're mad, you're insane. And so my anger was completely justified, and the resistance I had and twisting words, using sophistry, whatever, it was all about being right over here. That's the name of the game. I mean, and there's a reason for that, because the parasitic beliefs that control our behavior. It's another reason we think we're insane. We think we're free agents. No, we're not. These beliefs have to be right. They have to go unchallenged. They have to survive, and that's the operative, unchanged through time. Because as soon as something changes, it dies as to what it was. And that's our definition of survival, the effort of a form to maintain its structural integrity. And in the physical universe, that's impossible because everything's changing every second. But a belief, a non-physical surviving thought form is what we call it in our book, The Game of God, Recovering Your True Identity. GameofGod.com. Check us out. The reason that a belief, a non-physical form, is not subject to the interactional forces of change in the universe. A belief, that I'm ugly or I'm a loser, unless it's really challenged for how that thing was made up, really questioned, really looked at objectively, it will have absolute power over the host to be believer forever, for a lifetime. I relate. Anyway, the little, abstract stuff, but that's the background for why it's not we who are trying to be right. It's the beliefs that are trying to survive unchanged through time. And we totally identify with these beliefs. That's why in an argument, both sides put up their fists and come to blows or ultimately kill each other over to be right. That's what war is.
And, it's funny because I was nervous about that being on air. And actually, when we watched it, when it was airing for the first time, I thought, oh, my God, this looks so petty. I'm embarrassed because, it kind of exposes this level of pettiness that still exists in Arthur and my relationship. We've been together for 30 years, and it's like we still haven't worked out these kind of details. And so I wondered, how are people going to react to this? How, are they going to think, oh, man, those people really don't have their together, which is actually something we've moved through in the last.
State, having your we've been together.
I think this is our 41st show, and that's something that's been kind of an interesting process that we've been working through in the period of time we've been doing this. Is starting off. I wouldn't say acting like I really knew what I was talking about, but it was kind of theoretical and discussing ideas without bringing myself and my problems into it. And as we've gone through this, it's been more and more about being real on camera and exposing. Well, that could be true, but really exposing who I am and the struggles I'm going through at this stage in my life. And in the hope that would help other people, and so that's really the spirit in which we put that on was, this is
nobody here wants to be an expert. You know why? Because we're not expert. We're damned good in the mechanics of that little spiel I just gave about survival. We're really good at that. But knowing it analytically and experiencing it, really being off it, being enlightened, that's kind of a huge word. I think enlightenment probably happens in the here and now. You just get off it.
Yeah.
You drop it. And you drop it through an objective lifeline. And that's what we're trying to create in our work, including our new book, We Are All Innocent by Reason of Insanity, which we hope to get published ere I die.
But I think that's something it's really part of our culture for sure, is that when you go out in the world, you hide your problems. You put this face out to the public at large that you've got everything together. So nice
you've
got a happy relationship. You love your children. There's no problems at work.
There's smooth plastic parts down there where the naughty bit should be.
That's right. And so all our desires and hurts and disappointments and fears are all hidden, and which causes us huge stress because we were this schizophrenic personality of the good person out there and the bad person hidden in here. And I was just reading last night about the psychoanalytic community, and this eminent psychiatrist that was president of the Psychoanalytic Association had an addiction to Demerol, and divorced his wife, married someone else, eventually committed suicide with a Demerol overdose. I'm thinking, man, here's the most eminent psychoanalytic psychiatrist in the country. And that was his private problems that he couldn't share with the world, and you imagine he was going to an analyst regularly, and so that's really, I guess, what we're trying here is like, well, what would happen if we changed that? What would happen if we started becoming more honest about having problems? That, I'm not an expert, and Arthur and I squabble over petty issues. And we're trying to figure out how to do that. But what if we didn't hide the fact that we squabbled? What would happen?
Yeah, squabble is a polite word for hating each other's guts, which happens on a regular basis. That's what irritation, depression, sulking, anger, all that's in the manic side. You've got, optimism, giddiness, joy, the holiday season. The seasonal holiday depression, post-holiday depression, very real, very real. Mm-hmm. And it's a sad, just like a marriage ceremony. It's a sad attempt to finalize and guarantee love and affection till death do you part. Come quickly, Lord Jesus, get me out of this.
Well, Arthur had an idea, and I like this idea. The winter storm that happened around Christmas, we took a couple pictures, and Arthur thought this perfectly illustrated our separate, conflicting, mind-generated reality. So hopefully we'll be putting those up on the screen right now, so you can actually see them graphically portrayed.
Look at this picture first. This is one taken by Katie. The lines from a long, lustrous winter from Groundhog Day comes to mind. Just observe the beauty of this shot, and it just makes you feel good all over. It makes you want to just put another log on the fire and don't come out of the house until it's all over. Well, or go out and go.
Enjoy it.
Cross-country skiing.
That's right. Feels good.
Yeah. Okay. So now here's one taken by Katie at my request of me.
The next day,
showing the way I feel about winter. You can see a slightly different,
that's right,
claustrophobic, completely insane kind of hysteria, trapped in the ravaged face, imprisoned behind icicle bars. Mm-hmm. I'm a Florida boy. Well, and there is some of that in there. There's some objective background that lends itself to this. Katie, she went to school at Northwestern, went through big winter snows.
Right, brutally
grew
cold.
Up in, a suburb of St. Louis and went,
My dad was from Wisconsin. My mom was from Canada. So for me, winter was a great time. There was fun in winter. And
you were probably, when you were growing up, you were probably disappointed if there wasn't more snow.
Oh, well, first you got out of school, but then you got to go sledding and ice skating, and those are just really exciting things that you couldn't do in the summertime.
Dangerous, potential doom, fall through the ice, break your ankle. That's what I always thought. Balancing on those little rails, good Lord.
But it was a freedom of movement that nothing else really comes close to.
I see their freedom of movement. When winter, to me, is synonymous with confinement.
That's
remember the
interesting.
earlier
Right.
picture?
Right.
I mean, I grew up where it's 365 days a year. You walk out the door, and maybe it's raining, but that's about as bad as it gets. Wind in the palms, rustling the palms. Go swimming all year round if you want. Whee! Yeah, so a different reality, and that's about a very obvious condition called winter that comes every year.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
For 6 or 8 months.